Warning: the Bugle Weekly is no longer a compliant podcast. Listener discretion is advised. We have complied our asses off, and even went as far as becoming sponsored by PodConf. While we are still in a contractual agreement with them, we will be telling the truth about our sponsors, as well as the truth about government. We complied so hard, and got so far. But in the end, it doesn't even matter.
The dollar is fucked. Real estate and most other investments will take off once you don't comply with their tyranny. And their tyranny will become worse than ever, leaving ordinal NFT pump and dumps as our last hope. There's no other option.
For decades, manufacturing in the American Rust Belt has been exported to countries like China. The effects have been horrific on the communities impacted, eroding the industrial capacity of the United States down to zero. People lost their incomes and livelihoods to outsourcing. In the same way, the American people have outsourced their thinking to CIA-operated media organizations, as well as YouTubers like Tim Pool without journalistic credentials. Much of the American youth is outsourcing their thinking to Chinese applications like TikTok, paving the way for a dark future. The future of our country could be in peril as individuals continue to outsource their thinking in the same way America outsourced its manufacturing. That is why you, the Bugle reader, are a part of the solution. Instead of outsourcing your thinking to unqualified individuals, you are outsourcing it to the best in the game.
You can make America great again by reading the Bugle. Take back your mind by outsourcing the thinking to them instead of the spooks.
I, for one, am pretty disappointed. I thought compliance was the way to NGU. Turns out that was a mistake. The dang government told us to comply. And what did we do? We asked, how hard? Well, not anymore. That's why I'm calling for a compliance strike. No more compliance. None. Until the government complies along with us as equals, as peers. Because that's the only way all this works. We need to solve the Byzantine generals' problem of compliance so we can get back to solving NGU. Join me as we make the month of May a month of civil non-compliance, the American way.
PodConf is an organization dedicated to controlling the narrative around Bitcoin as well as promoting the idea of number go up above all else. They have recently launched a merchandise store in order to try and continue to capture the mind of Bitcoin podcasters and podcast listeners. At the Bugle, while we are sponsored by PodConf and obligated to play ad reads for them weekly, we find it important to warn our listeners that this cabal is dangerous and should not be trusted. Now enough of that gay shit. Let's get to the show.
All right, Rod. It feels like there's been a big shift, a change in season. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, but I feel the shift as well. I've got a sinus infection. I think that's the atmospheric pressures just totally changing in the industry, especially on Bitcoin Twitter. I think the era of voluntary compliance might be coming to an end.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a pretty big shift for the compliance advocates to just up and surrender and realize and support non-compliance after campaigning so hard.
I mean, think about how much money and investments from venture capitalists from building these businesses around compliance. You can't just switch overnight. When these strategies, it's going to be a tough adjustment period.
Yeah. Well, Dennis Porter is claiming that if they give him 10 Bitcoin, he's going to be able to fix the whole situation and get the U.S. back on track. But I don't really believe him.
I don't know. I think he might be compromised. But if he's not compromised, and you think about the power of deflationary money on government, like right now, according to Dennis, it takes 10 Bitcoin to absolutely change the government for better. In 20 years, it might only take 1 or 2 Bitcoin to change the government for better. And I think that's powerful, a powerful meme.
Yeah, it is a powerful meme, but here's the thing that people don't understand is that media companies are way more powerful than lobbyists, because at the end of the day, media shapes the public perception, where the lobbyists just, what is Dennis really doing? I mean, he's taking selfies and tweeting about them, but do you think that really gets politicians to understand Bitcoin?
No,
I don't really think so.
I don't think so. I think it also understates the importance of requiring journalism degrees to be in the media. I think you have way too many people who are in the media influencing the industry they're just there because they're pretty or they're very smart or they used to be a professional athlete or an OG Bitcoiner, but they don't have journalism degrees. They have perverted the system because of that.
Yeah. All right. We had technical difficulties and totally lost our trail of thought, but I think the solution to this is we need Elon Musk to ensure the only people on Twitter practicing journalism are people with journalism check marks, that he can verify their credentials through a KYC process. And so this would be something that Twitter does entirely voluntary. So it's going to be a private solution, a market-based solution instead of a government forced solution. Now, it'd be problematic if the government was telling Twitter to do that, but if Elon does this to save journalism and fight misinformation, that'd be pretty powerful, in my opinion.
Yeah, they should call it NYJ. Know your journalist. That's a big one for you, Elon. But you're right. I think you make a very good point here. If you ever listen to the most impressive, the most successful entrepreneurs, Jeff Bezos is a great example. He talks about obsession with your customer, knowing your customer better than they know themselves. And if you take that approach, you can have a successful business. I think that part of the reason you have companies like ISK, you have companies like Hodl, and all these other companies that they don't know their customers. That's why they're having such a hard time competing with the centralized companies. They don't build a good enough user experience because they don't know their customer. And I think that you can know your customer voluntarily, privately, instead of doing it for the regulation standpoint or the compliance effect. And then that way, if you know your customer, build a better product and not have to report that to the authority.
Yeah, I don't understand why more businesses don't want to know their customers.
Yeah, I don't want to use a product. The owner of that product, the seller of that product, doesn't even want to get to know me.
Yeah.
I'm a friendly guy. I have a lot of good ideas about NGU, about Bitcoin. They don't even care.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the problems with Coinbase is, like, while they practice strict know your customer laws, it seems like after that, the employees there, they don't take any time to get to know their customers. Like, people
Right.
have a lot of issues with Coinbase support. You're never going to expect one of the stackers on Coinbase to get a tweet reply from Brian Armstrong, whereas Corey Clipston, you're stacking $25 a week on Swan, that like pretty much secures you a tweet reply from him if
Well,
you tag him.
that underscores a very important point. You look at a company like Swan, they really get to know their customers on top of the government requirement that they know their customers. So you have these two camps of companies. You have ones that don't want to know their customers. They don't gather any information. And typically their user experience is suboptimal. And then you have companies who only know their customer because the government requires them to. And then they just pass that information off to Washington. And they don't take time to study it and get to know their customers because they want to.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, Swan does a great job of getting to know their customers. They not only collect all their personal information and data, but they also invite all their customers to a conference where you can get FaceTime with the employees.
That's
which is pretty unique.
Can you imagine if Coinbase had a conference where everybody could come and hang out with all the people they hear on Spaces, on podcasts all year long. I mean, that would be huge.
Yeah. I mean, I've been moving away from compliant exchanges and like thinking of them as a viable option at this point. But if I were to choose between Swan and River, I would choose Swan in a heartbeat because you're never going to see Alex Leishman throwing a conference to invite all his customers to and like responding to them on Twitter and like shooting basketball hoops with them. Like Leishman's, he's never gonna do that. I don't know what if he thinks he's too important or like he just has like poor time management.
Well,
Um,
if you look at the people who don't have conferences, and if something happens in the public relations field or the legal field, nobody comes to their defense. But if you have a podcast or you have a conference, likely it is so much more likely that people will defend you and take up your cause. I think maybe Samurai, one of their mistakes was not having a conference.
yeah. Well, this might be a good time to discuss our sponsors. Speaking of that, because PodConf is one of them, and we're kind of pissed at them. But yeah, I mean, if you're a media company, um, that also has another Bitcoin service, and you're throwing a conference, uh, PodConf is going to have a lot of influence over you, and you get some protection for that, but you also become a heartless shitcoiner trying to control the narrative and shut down real journalism.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to continue to run PodConf ads and to support them in this partnership that we have as our advertiser. But I think it should be noted that we are no longer aligned morally or ethically with PodConf. I think we've grown sick of their shit.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things that we agree on, which is NGU. But even after the government has so blatantly been non-compliant this week, uh, they still support compliance, and it just kind of blows my mind.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's an old saying that Bitcoin is money for enemies. And I think as a podcast, oftentimes, or at least in our experience, our sponsors are also our enemies. So it's a fitting phrase.
I like that. Podcast sponsorships are for enemies.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there should be a more adversarial relationship between podcasts and their sponsors. And I think that we're going to be that example.
So do you think Peter McCormick really hates his sponsors? Like he's just filled with loathing, but he reads it anyways and pretends like he isn't?
I think Peter would tell you, just as any other major influential podcaster would tell you, that not every morning they wake up and are excited to read the ads from their sponsors. But some days it can be easier than others. And I think as a podcaster, you have the duty to read your sponsor's copy with conviction and with with passion, because you've agreed to a contractual obligation. But that doesn't mean you have to personally like them. I think Peter definitely does dislike some of his sponsors, especially because of what they've done to his reputation over the years. They've done a lot of damage to him.
I bet you that Peter has a NIM account on Twitter where he goes and yells at his sponsors for being scammers.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder how many of those accounts are out there where it's a NIM account that seems like its own brand or its own person, or really it's just kind of this aspect of another influencer that you already follow. He's just expressing his dissatisfaction with PodConf or with his own company as a NIM with a totally different personality. It makes you wonder how many ghosts are really out there.
I wonder, do you think that he could have been running the triple elite memes as a civil attack against his sponsors?
Yeah, I think if you look at Triple Elite memes, they never really went after Peter. They went after some of the companies who were not sponsoring Peter, but are now sponsoring Peter. I mean, that's just a coincidence, perhaps, but something to think about.
That would be a pretty big deal if Peter was wielding triple elite memes against prospective sponsors
I mean,
and only yielding when they gave him money.
think about it. If triple elite memes damages your public reputation enough, you need, how do you solve that? You have to spend more money on advertising and sponsorships. And this is the benefit of that sponsorship money. Peter.
Is this something the Anti-Toxicity League could help with?
Yeah, I think so. I think that the Anti-Toxicity League could be a very good leadership. They should show leadership or influence in minimizing some of the toxic attitudes on social media. And that way, especially in bear markets, companies could spend less on advertising and less on sponsorships and more on the infrastructure of non-compliance.
Huh. Yeah, it would be great to save money on having to be compliant and actually putting that towards productive activities. So we've got another sponsor for the week. Or actually, one last thing on PodConf, because before we go there, I got my PodConf t-shirt in the mail that I bought, and I'm thinking about returning it because I no longer want to rep PodConf after their shenanigans with launching those shitcoins. Yeah, I've just been thinking about returning my t-shirt for PodConf because I don't want to rep it anymore. I don't want to rep these guys that want to be compliant. Like I'd rather rep companies like Compliance Shield.
Compliance
Or
Shield,
Compliance Strict.
Compliance Strike is, yeah, I mean, and Strike, they messaged us and they told us what they were thinking about doing, and it really aligns with how we've been feeling lately. I think we've been so willing and ready and credulous to the idea of compliance leading to NGU, and we've learned, at least over the last week, and additional information has come in. It's not just enough for Bitcoiners to be compliant. You need the government to be compliant. Because if you can't, if you don't have the Byzantine generals problem solved, where the person making a decision about how to interact, how to transact, how to buy, which laws to follow, they have to know that every other node on that network is aligned with that. Because if they attack, they need to know all the other nodes are going to attack. Or if they're going to comply, they need to know all the other nodes are going to comply. Because if one doesn't, it breaks down the whole communication line. It breaks down the whole mission. And you can't succeed without everybody being in consensus. And so I think that we need to go on strike regarding compliance. Maybe show some civil disobedience or some civil non-compliance until the government upholds their end of the bargain.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we've seen really shift is I think a lot of people are understanding that civil disobedience is the new trend. Like we should, institutions like the non-compliant CIA, we should strike until they comply, and we should hit them where it hurts.
Yeah, I think everybody that listens to this show, who goes to podcast conferences, understands that we all value consumerism. So if you're thinking about consumerism, think about going to the mall and you see different items of clothing that match different seasons. Well, I think Plonk and that line of clothing is just so last season. The next season is about civil non-compliance. And I think that's where people in the trend and the memes and the fashion, that's where it's trending right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a saying that non-compliant individuals create compliant times, and then compliant individuals create hard times, which then creates non-compliant individuals to kind of pick up the pieces. So it's kind of the circular.
It is a circular cycle. It's vicious. I think we Compliance got us a really, really long way towards NGU. The ETF got us to new all-time highs. But it doesn't last. You have to keep going. And I think we're going into a new cycle where we're realizing that maybe we complied a little too hard. Maybe we complied a little too far. And in the end, that doesn't matter. What matters is adjusting and adapting.
Yeah. And, some people might criticize us for being wrong, but the thing was that we were correct at that given time, that was the best strategy, and we're having to shift due to changing circumstances that are outside of our control. So we were never incorrect. We were correct in the moment.
Right.
But if we were to keep those opinions, we would be incorrect now, but we're not.
Right.
So we were correct.
We reserve the right to change our mind. We have.
And I know, like, a lot of other people that change their minds on topics, shouldn't be given the credit that we are. And part of the reason is because they're not credentialed journalists like us.
Right. Part of being a journalist is being able to consume new podcasts or new information and adjust your world, your brain to do that. Not everybody has that college training. If you don't have that college training, you might pivot and change your mind too quickly, or pivot and change your mind too late. And that way you're leading people astray. But we have changed our minds at exactly the right time because of our extensive training. It allows us to do that.
Yeah. That was really, I remember my sophomore year, I took a course called How to Change Your Mind on Any Given Opinion at any time, and that was a very helpful one.
And that is where markets, and that's why you need free markets, right? Because that's where you get your information. Once the value of your opinion changes, you have to be able to watch the corresponding price. The more valuable the information that you are telling your audience, that you're reporting to your audience, the more money it makes you from your sponsors is a signal, a market signal, telling you that opinion is now correct. And you have to follow the price signal.
100%. Well, do you want to segue into your poem that you wrote?
Yeah, I think that this poem, I found it on Stacker News. I think that it does a good job of conveying exactly what we were talking about and why we decided to change our mind. And it goes like this. It goes, first, they came for the shitcoiners, and I did not speak out because I was not a shitcoiner. Then they came for the money launderers, and I did not speak out because I was not a money launderer. Then they came for the non-compliant, and I did not speak out because I was compliant. But then they came for me, someone who is compliant, and there was no one left to speak for me. End poem. I just think that really is beautiful and powerful, and I think that a lot of people will have that impact that I did.
Yeah, that's a very timely poem. And, I mean, maybe it should be forwarded over to Samurai's legal defense to read that poem to the jury in their criminal trial. Because I think that might really shift their opinions of them understanding, one, that it should be legal to launder money for the CIA in a democracy, and then two, that open source software is it's a compliant activity.
Right. And 100%. That is the other thing that we need to make our represented officials understand, is that this is a democracy. And if in a democracy, if the government wants to launder money, then it's not illegal for the citizens to help them launder money. Because it is a democratic effort, a team. It takes every American to get the strategy or the mission accomplished. It shouldn't be illegal. I mean, the case should be thrown out on those grounds alone because we are a democracy.
Well, I think the only solution in this situation is to force the government to comply through civil disobedience, but also through legislation. That we need to change the Constitution so that they're compliant.
Yeah, I saw Monty Bent. He said that we need to start suing the government, and if we start doing that, that's something we can start today. And if we need a constitutional convention, we need to change the Constitution. What changes do you think we should make?
I have some. Let me pull up my notes. I have some preliminary thoughts on this. I think one of the big ones that needs to happen is there needs to be an amendment to make the income tax constitutional. Like that's one of the first and foremost ones.
That right there, everybody is complying and paying an income tax. It's not even legal. It's not even in the rules or in the law or in the Constitution anywhere. And that should be happening. We need to add that right away so we can all be in consensus and complying according to the actual law.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like every time the IRS goes after somebody for not paying income tax, they're non-compliant. And so that's a major issue.
Imagine if this law existed. If you overpaid your taxes, the government should have to return that to you. And if they don't, or if they take too long, you should be able to get interest on your overspend. But because it's not even in the U.S. law or the Constitution that you have to pay taxes, they can just hold that extra money and you give them because it's like a donation.
Yeah, I mean, this non-compliant organization thinks that your money is Ukraine's money. And until Congress votes, and maybe this should be something too that we should make as part of the Constitution is for the U.S. to vote to join both Israel and Ukraine so that all the money they're sending over there is compliant as well.
Yeah, and we could make those the 51st and 52nd states in the United States, and that way they can pay taxes back.
Yeah, I think that Washington, D.C. should become the 51st state. So we'd be up to 54, adding Washington, D.C., Israel, and Ukraine. But I think the more the better, you know. And all these countries that have U.S. military bases in them, we should force a vote on the U.S. voting to join those countries as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can also get the same rules so that we could have the same Lightning wallets available in all of these different places around the world, because some of them, they're not available in every country. So you can't even use them when you get there. But if we had more United States added by where all of our troops were, then our troops tell you that the country is safe. So if you could go to a safe country in the United States and still use your custodial Lightning wallet, I think that really improves the user experience a great deal.
It's a rewarding exercise that serves as the foundation for the value-for-value relationship between a government and its citizens in a healthy democracy. It can also be pretty stressful. If you make a mistake, the consequences can be costly. For most people, tax season is the most stressful time of the year, but if you're a Bitcoiner who values compliance, the stress doesn't end on April 15th. That's because being a compliant Bitcoiner is like being a mom. It's a never-ending job. That's why I developed Compliance Shield, the all-in-one solution for protecting your compliant reputation. Your reputation is important, whether it's with the IRS or the nearly 500 other federal and state government agencies that are working around the clock to keep you safe. All you have to do is upload the XPub for your cold storage wallet and let Compliance Shield do the rest.
Compliance Shield's state-of-the-art algorithm runs on top of our cloud-based Bitcoin core node and monitors all your Bitcoin addresses for suspicious activity, dust attacks, and much more. Compliance Shield also records every transaction you make and updates your dynamic compliance score to help you stay accountable. Compliance Shield even monitors the recipients of your transactions for up to 1 year to ensure you're not transacting with criminals or serially non-compliant counterparties. Compliance Shield lets you label addresses belonging to your friends and family and reports them to all relevant law enforcement agencies. A government that knows who its citizens exchange value with, as well as what they value, can use that data to better serve everyone. If you sign up today, you can take advantage of Compliance Shield's Real Pleb integration, connect on-chain identities with other Real Plebs to build a safe, compliant, circular economy. Citadels require solid foundations. Get Compliance Shield today for just $420 per month, so you can start building the foundation for your Citadel and get a head start preparing for hyper-Bitcoinization.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like one of the easiest ways to fix the issues at the border that everybody's upset with right now. The way you fix mass immigration in the United States is you just add all these countries that people are immigrating from to
in the United States,
United,
and they'll stay where they're at and be able to benefit from American citizens. That's a great idea.
Because the only reason that these people are not successful and they want to leave their country is because they haven't experienced American democracy yet.
Right.
And so having Joe Biden or Donald Trump be president for the next 4 years of, Guatemala or El Salvador or Afghanistan or, whichever country. Like, imagine if Libya joined the United States, how peaceful and compliant it would become.
Wow, they would get American schools. They would get American police. It would be so beneficial.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, it seems like a mountain to climb that is just like insurmountable to make the U.S. federal government compliant. Like, I don't know how we get from 0 to 1 on this. Like, that's a pretty far distance.
I think we're just going to have to show the government the benefit of NGU. I just don't think they see it yet.
Yeah, well, I think they need some pain on both sides. They need the pain of us becoming rich without them, but they also need the pain of us being non-compliant, using Bitcoin, forcing them to want to be compliant with us.
I don't know how we solve it. I think we're going to need a lot more help. I think we're going to need a lot more people in the community to come together on it. We're going to need more influence.
I mean, imagine if Just Stop Ordinals starts doing their protests at these different political events. Instead of going after ordinals, they go after the government for being non-compliant. How much of a shift that would be.
Yeah, I mean, people talk about the impact that a group like Desktop Ordinals could have, or a different group like the Maximalists, the monetary maximalists, or the privacy influencers. If they stop working independently and they join their forces, there's a term called synergy, where it's what value of the collective is worth more than the output value of the individual group. And that's maybe how we could funnel this energy and influence into a giant, like a monolithic influencer, like the God influencer. Maybe the God influencer could be the one that starts to impact the way the government thinks.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that kind of Messiah type figure could be coming, and I think a good candidate for it is Michael Saylor. And I know a lot of people are going to be shocked by this because he's been one of the most compliant individuals in Bitcoin and preachers of compliance, and seems completely captured by PodConf. But I think there's a lot of evidence leading to the idea that he's secretly a non-compliant individual behind the scenes.
What would his motivation or what would his incentive be to be kind of this undercover compliance agent?
Well, to he's kind of trying to Trojan horse this whole apparatus which exists behind the scenes to control everything. That's not really visible to the average person, but if you pay attention, you can see it's all these, non-compliant government actors mixed with compliant Bitcoin company CEOs and individuals. And it's just like this. It's bigger than PodConf. Like PodConf's pretty big, but there's a bigger entity than PodConf that exists behind the scenes that Saylor appears to be trying to disrupt. And he's dropping messages to the plebs as far as what the plan is to go after these guys.
Are you saying that there's almost like a deep state arm of PodConf, or a bigger state arm that PodConf is unable to fully control?
Well, PodConf is controlled by this organization. Yeah.
Oh wow. What kind of communication is he sending? Like how are we able to distinguish between what Saylor is saying when he's talking, or he's trying to influence BlackRock, he's trying to keep the government and the senators and the regulators off of hardworking plebs back. He's just trying to keep those guys protected and trying to demonstrate a certain level of strategy towards that audience. How does he know if you're a pleb when he's talking to you?
Well, I think part of the way he's doing it is he's releasing these cryptic messages on Stacker News that only plebs can understand. And so his first one that he did using an account called S-Drops, he said, "I know a lot of you are scared out there, but rest assured things will be okay. There is a plan and a great spiritual battle that lies ahead that ends in us winning and humanity experiencing a mass awakening in the form of hyper-Bitcoinization. Remember to hodl at all costs and limit the usage of Bitcoin as a medium of exchange to prevent the authorities for stamping down too hard soon. There are many of us working behind the scenes to protect Bitcoin and make it great again. The storm is coming."
Wow. So, I mean, just as somebody who's so dedicated, so passionate about Bitcoin in the space, I just, especially when I'm on spaces or on Bitcoin Twitter in general, everything that message said was happening. That's kind of what I could sense and I could feel that was happening. Like it gives me goosebumps to hear that somebody condensed all of those feelings that I had and is communicating that they're true. Sometimes when Saylor would talk about Bitcoin not being money, a medium of exchange, it just felt like he was saying that to throw off the banks and throw off the government, to make them feel like this wasn't a threat. And I didn't think that he was genuinely felt that way. So it's like, it feels really powerful to hear him kind of admit that, and kind of slip that to us in these S-Drops. I think it really eases a lot of my anxiety.
Yeah, I mean, I think Stacker News is a really interesting platform. It's a anonymous communication platform with, you can just sign up with a username. and nobody, there's no compliance data collection in that process. So, but and you can start earning Bitcoin. But it makes sense because it's a platform that is only dominated by the plebs. Like there's no suits or spooks on there, from what I can tell.
It's
So
really important that we have these outlets and tools like Stacker, because if every company, every tool if they tried to know their customer, they used KYC, Cellular wouldn't be able to come in and post like that and be able to give us that boost of encouragement and let us know what's really going on behind the scenes, because they would know that was Cellular and that it would leak to the journalist who would have to report the news. But he can do that anonymously.
So I think, some people might not be convinced at this point that this was actually Sailor, and I just want to assure them it is. I took these, few sentences that he put in his S drop and ran it through Chat GPT and compared it against, the transcript. So I had given Chat GPT all the transcripts from all of his lines in the series that he did with Robert Breedlove on What Is Money. And ChatGPT said it had a 97% match rate. So I'm pretty convinced.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the ways that you can communicate, I guess. Get your message out there through these different, I don't know, mediums. It's like it's like a signature. It's like you used to have handwriting experts who could say, somebody wrote this note because I've studied their handwriting. ChatGPT is doing that digitally. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, it's very exciting. It's the ability to de-anonymize NIMS using AI, looking at their writing patterns, is a very exciting deal, because it forces journalists to go and get credentials and publish under their name instead of hiding.
Yeah,
like
and I think it prevents these Sybil attacks that we talked about, where it makes it seem like there is all of these different identities carrying these opinions. But I think if you can look at the patterns of how those messages have been crafted, you can kind of de-anonymize them, and you can realize, oh, it isn't 5,000 accounts tweeting this particular opinion. This is really all coming from a central point, and they are just syndicating this message. And I think you can realize, wow, this is, it seems like 5,000, but maybe it's only one or two.
Definitely. Yeah, it's really good. Did you want to go into Coffeegate?
Yeah, I think that it really kind of plays along with this S-drop thing, and it's also, coincidentally, from Stacker News. And they did some freedom of information at request on the government, which is kind of a request to comply. And some of those are handled on a request by request basis. So we've got these documents, and it turns out that something that has been very, very popular anecdote in the Bitcoin space is, you want to be able to use layer one to buy coffee. And Michael Saylor has even said that. He also said it with Robert Breedlove. He mentioned coffee. But this term actually has a double meaning. It turns out that Michael Saylor is working on recovering his deep state. And he's working with the CIA on money laundering. He's helping the CIA use Bitcoin for money laundering. He's also working with the plant. So he's a double agent. When they talk about coffee, it actually means money laundering. They use that term in podcasts and in interviews to signal to other agents. And if they say it's no longer safe, or it's no longer affordable to use the base layer of Bitcoin to buy coffee, that means it's no longer safe to launder money on Bitcoin. It communicates that to all these agents. They have a list of terms where they talk about different forms of coffee or different aspects of coffee that have different deeper meanings. So decaf coffee means friendly counterparty, like another federal agent. They have other ones like a barista, means a mixing pool coordinator, or a club brew, which means non-custodial mixing servers. And that's how they communicate back. Or that's how the CIA communicates in the media to each other. And it's Taylor is kind of a part of that. So if he is trying to influence the government to comply, to reform, and just to fix the financial system, it would make sense that he's working very closely with the CIA.
Yeah, it's a lot of confusing stuff that we'll continue to update our audience on and cover. And you would just encourage everybody listening to avoid digging into it yourself, because it's, really easy to get confused if you don't have the proper ways to vet information. Sometimes it's actually, non-compliant for non-journalists to have the information that we have on these types of topics when dealing with the CIA, and stuff like that. And so, yeah, just follow our lead, and we'll keep you updated on Sailor's big moves.
I think everything's going to work out, guys. I do, but I think we do need to keep the government a little bit more accountable.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think some of the best ways for individuals to engage in civil disobedience over what's happening to the samurai guys is?
Well, I mean, one thing is to keep using non-custodial Lightning wallets and using open source coin mixing or coin join. But it also means supporting each other. I mean, we had Phoenix Wallet, which was ostensibly non-custodial Lightning wallet, so why? These civil disobedience. He's pulled out of the U.S. market, and it turns out that Phoenix Wallet is made by Async, and they are French. It's just very disappointing that when France was facing the Nazis, we saved their ass, and as we are facing government who is attacking us and attacking our privacy, they just pull away when we need them.
I know Ledger is also French. Do you think this will implicate them at all, and they'll have a hasty retreat as well, forgetting
I think
all the history?
No, I think Ledger is so committed to compliance that it's hard to know what they're going to do anymore. But I think that I don't think anybody's going to attack them. I think if they were going to be attacked, they would by now, and maybe they already were, and they're actually just operating as an arm for the European or the U.S. governments, and they don't tell us. And it's kind of strange that nobody has really come after them as the biggest cold storage wallet in the industry. It has been for a long time.
Well, it's interesting because I noticed that they've been interacting and sponsoring different groups from PodConf, like Bitcoin Magazine, recently. So maybe that's part of the reason why they get a pass. They don't have the scrutiny. Yeah,
that could make sense.
Yeah, I know. I saw Rizzo shilling Ledger really hard the other day on a stream. And I was kind of surprised, but PodConf is going to do what PodConf's going to do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe all of the toxicity and the controversy that was surrounding Ledger last year, maybe it was the year before. I don't know. They've been sponsoring Peter McCormack's podcast since then, so maybe their sponsorships cleaned up the reputation. It's them a pass now.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot of standards for sponsorships when it comes to PodConf.
That's true.
It's bummer. I mean, when you're a journalist, you vet your sponsors in the same way that you vet
your customers. Vet your customers. I mean,
yeah,
it's like if somebody wants to get on your platform and you want to charge them to use Bitcoin custodially, get to know them pretty well. You know everything about them, their social security number, for God's sake. Like, how many people do you really share that with other than your Bitcoin custodian and your doctor? But it's like, when somebody wants to sponsor your podcast, you don't ask questions. You don't get to know them. You just take their sats, their money. And maybe if you got to know them a little better, you'd be a more healthy relationship.
Yeah. So I just had a thought go through my head. So last week we were talking about compliance a whole lot, and we made it a rule on our show to that for people to continue listening, they would have to send our KYC data in, and only like 1% of our listeners sent their KYC data in. But I'm wondering what we should do with the data that we collected now that we don't support that activity anymore.
Yeah, maybe, we can't give it to the government. We could keep it. I mean, we could just store it in the database. Like a lot of these companies, they don't give their KYC data to the government right away. They just keep them in a database. They're just sitting there for anybody to come to look at or to come you, and then they could say, hey, I could use this data for marketing, right? So you could sell that data for marketing, and those people could better figure out what you care about, what you value, and make sure that you're seeing those ads. You're able to hear these podcasts, and the advertisers are speaking to you because they have your data. And as long as they're in a database it's only being sold to these other broadcom compliant companies, and it goes to their databases, that's what we want to keep happening. It gets into the wrong hands. It goes into like a dark web database. Then people might use that to come your house, right, to come try to steal your Bitcoin, or to email you and you to click on a phishing link so they can steal your Bitcoin. As long as it doesn't happen, we don't want those people to get that data. We want to keep it in all of the compliant databases so that we can only use it to like advertise to you, not for like a nefarious person trying to steal your Bitcoin in a very illegal way.
Yeah. So it sounds like the two options are to either hodl the KYC data or to sell it to a private company that's not the government. Am I kind of understanding correctly?
Yeah, I think so. I think that your shareholders and your investors, if you were to just delete that data, they would probably consider that they would probably fire you for it. So you have to monetize it.
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy's song talks about why it's important to make sure your VCs don't fire you, and it's because the venture capitalists, they're much more experienced than the actual founders of the company, and so they know the best ways to monetize everything and make it work correctly.
Right. They understand. They understand exactly how to give customers the best privacy, the best experience. And it always aligns with allocating capital efficiently. And that's what venture capitalists do. They allocate capital efficiently so they can make a profit. And their profit relies on basically your experience and your data being protected.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just about them helping on the business side, but it's also that VCs also tend to be very aligned with the Bitcoin ethos of kind of the cypherpunk movement.
Right. A venture capitalist and a cypherpunk, they have so much in common. One of them is using encryption to fight the state, whereas the VCs are using investments to pay the state more in taxes. And it's all on the tax. You have to get tax write-offs first. You're actually undermining the state by taking those resources. They're pretty much the same thing, cypherpunks and VCs.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think we should wrap up by reading the Fountain Boost real quick.
Let's do that.
All right, let's split them off. I'll start with John. So John sent us 21,000 sats and said, PodConf is a great evil. We, the ungovernable misfits, will not yield to compliance mandates that infringe upon our inherent right to privacy in the pursuit of freedom and sovereignty. Fuck PodConf. So it sounds like John is he's on the board with being non-compliant with PodConf and with the government, and so it's pretty encouraging to hear we've got at least one person understanding what we're talking about.
Well, thank you, John. And honestly, right below that, we've got fundamentals. He sent us 5,000 sats. Fuck PodConf. All your other spot. Well, we really do appreciate the emotional enthusiasm, fundamentals, and yes, fuck PodConf and propose civil disobedience now. And not all of our sponsors are necessary. We don't mean fuck all of them. So that's just a very excited fan. Only the PodConf. And if you're not PodConf and you want to sponsor us, we definitely don't want anybody to offend you. So thank you, fundamentals. Just tone it down a bit.
Yeah, agreed. One of our favorites, Orange March, said, thank you for your persistent compliance and commitment to NGU technology. Well, Orange Mart, we're no longer really committed to compliance, but we are committed to NGU technology 100%.
Right, and this was, Orange Mart posted this 6 days ago, so we had not changed our mind about compliance yet, so we can take credit for your, thank you, because at the time, we were correct, but we have changed, of course, now.
Yeah, and I guess what's important to understand is, like, I think that we're going to come to the conclusion after doing enough research that the only solution, if you're non-compliant, to, like, replace NGU forces is by supporting degeneracy like ordinals.
Well, yeah, that's a big shift.
The next one is John again saying non-credentialed Bitcoin podcaster here. John, we'll give you a pass, but you're really riding the edge by flaunting that you don't have credentials, but you should probably go back to school is my suggestion.
Like I said, we're not going to attack you anymore, but just think about the example you're setting to, like, does your family, does your community, does your listeners get value as you're having a podcast, but you don't have the training and credentials to report to them the kind of signal that they deserve and respect from a podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I think a pretty scary future is a future where children don't understand the importance of credentialed individuals.
Yeah, I just think that if we're all on the same mission and we're trying to provide our people value, signal, and value, just look inside. Think, is what I'm doing providing signal, or am I just giving them more noise? And if you don't have a degree, it's 99.9% chance that you're just giving them more noise.
Yeah. So clean it up, John. All right, you want to get the next two?
With that Rod Hamilton, it's like noticing on fountain splits. It's out going to dick. Were you getting your smoking money, Rod? And that's I am, Rod. We have I'm getting all the podcast money. That's why I got all the clothes. If you listen to the other episode, Richard was not getting any of the t-shirts. He had to buy his own, because that's how we do it. I get the podcast money. He gets all of the fountain money. So thanks, Rob. And then we got go ahead.
Well, I think it's important to understand. So we made this decision with the Fountain Boost was all of them would route through me, and we have an agreed upon split going behind the scenes that we don't want to, necessarily disclose at this time. But we felt it was better for me to act as an unlicensed money transmitter to give Rod his payouts versus doing like kind of this organic split thing. So we moved it from like a compliant solution to a non-compliant solution.
Exactly. We're trying to live our ethos. Then we've got at Motions. He posted 1,000 sats. Truth is falsehood. Peace is war. Podcom is information. Drink Sprite. Thank you, Motions. That was a beautiful poem.
Yeah, thank you, Motions. Next to Wild Hustle, just said 100. Yeah, keep it 100, Wild Hustle. Thank you for your donation. Your non-compliant donation to us. And then Blazer4151 says, I don't know if I'm supposed to be laughing, but I listened the whole time and I enjoyed it. Ignorance is bliss. Well, ignorance isn't bliss. Ignorance is to not listen to this podcast, actually, which is not bliss. You know, individuals that listen to the things that we're talking about, they're enlightened. They make better decisions. They see the world. Like you don't even need to read the Mandibles to know what's coming next. You can just listen to the Bugle Weekly.
It sounds like there is not really. Yeah, maybe Blazar is ignorant, but it sounds like he liked the Bugle, and if he keeps listening or if she keeps listening, maybe that listening to real journalists will fix the.
Yeah, I mean, real journalism is definitely quite the healing thing, healing power.
It was ignorance, yeah. And the last one, you got Southside, who boosted 420 sats. Shinobi can talk on spaces, but D++ can actually code. Mute Aaron and Barbie brought to you by Bugle. That was a good one. We're still trying to work on getting those two together.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely some attraction being felt both ways, and I think they're excited, but they're also just a little bit nervous and intimidated by each other because even stars can be starstruck by other stars.
That's true. I mean, it would seem pretty easy for influencers to fall in love, but they're really insecure. I think we can try to encourage them. Maybe reach out to them and encourage this love and relationship. Let them know that as somebody who likes to consume influencer content, and it's a storyline you would like them to pursue.
Yeah, I mean, I know Shinobi would probably feel really good if you brought this up to him in Twitter Spaces. You know, when he's arguing with Terrence Yang about ordinals, just encourage him and say, "Hey, man, like you're ready for the big leagues here. You can really be worthy of D++."
Yeah, and D++. I mean, it's almost a meme at this point where a girl sees a guy like Shinobi and thinks, I can change him. You can change him. You could be the one that taught Shinobi how to code. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, hopefully she beats Jimmy's song to it, because I know he's been working on it as well. Well, anyways, you got any final thoughts, Rod?
Just stay frosty out there. I think that your opportunity to show your civil disobedience, your civil non-compliance, I think it's time to start thinking about what that could be, how you could contribute, how we can civilly non-comply together.
Well, I know one thing I'll be doing this week. I'll be going and buying some raw milk from the Amish milkman.
Yeah, I need to get some more grass-fed steak and some raw milk myself. I took my testosterone levels the other day, and they were only 10% above normal, which is really soy boy simp bullshit. I need to get that shit higher.
Yeah, I mean, I think like every good doctor will tell you the first step to raising your T is to read the Bitcoin Standard and then go listen to Andrew Tate right afterwards.
Yeah, and just like you've been seeing on Bitcoin Twitter recently from experts, cholesterol doesn't matter. So you can keep eating steak And high cholesterol is not bad for you. It actually is, the government doesn't want you to have high testosterone because people with high testosterone and high cholesterol, they're less compliant.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, thank you for tuning into the Bugle Weekly podcast. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Bugle Weekly podcast. There has been a shift in seasons as Rod and Dick are now exploring using civil disobedience in order to force the government to be compliant. It should not be illegal to launder money for government agencies in a democracy. We are all coming to grips with the fact that despite how hard we complied, in the end, it doesn't even matter. The United States just does not seem as free as it used to be, and we need to look for ways to restore it to the republic we were taught it once was in public schools. While it may seem dark out there, have hope. There are still journalists with the proper credentials working towards freedom every single day. Keep your head up and make sure to boost the show as much as possible as an act of civil disobedience. We will see you next week on the Bugle Weekly.